Hello.
Hello, Bing.
Hi, hi everyone. Hi, Will. And hi, Diana in the background there. Um, Welcome everyone. I think we've got quite a large number of people here already, so it's a good time to begin. Welcome to the Oasis and Covalent Joint Developer webinar. I'm Libing. I'm from the DevRel team of Covalent, and we have Will here from the ecosystems growth team in Oasis protocol.
Hi,
So
everyone.
hey, Will. We're really excited to give you this webinar, casual webinar today, where we talk about the Oasis network, as well as the recent covalent integration of the Oasis Emerald mainnet. So Covalent is a data API service provider. You can get all the on-chain data really easily when you use our API. And with this integration with Oasis Network, we help to really improve the developer experience, whether you are a backend Solidity developer or like Web3 front-end dev, it will improve your life, hopefully. So why not, Will, maybe you can give us a bit of a background first about what is Oasis, why should people be really excited about it, and what some of the opportunities there are for developers.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Libing, for that introduction. For those of you guys who don't know, I'm Will. I'm the ecosystem growth manager at Oasis. So I handle a lot of different tasks. I basically work with our marketing team, our community team, our BD team, and our engineering team to help with strategy, growth, and like prioritization of our ecosystem. So Diana, maybe next slide, and I can go into yeah. So what we're going to go over today is we're just going to go over what is Oasis from an ecosystem and tech perspective. What is Covalent API? How to access on-chain data on Emerald with the Covalent API, and then some more info on the Oasis ecosystem, what's coming next, and then a short Q&A period as well. Diana? Yeah, so for those of you guys who maybe are new to Oasis or haven't heard of us before, Oasis Network is the leading privacy-focused layer 1 blockchain protocol. So we were founded in 2018, and one of the things that we are like most proud of is that we were one of the first to come up with this modular architecture, which separates consensus and execution. So it's pretty humbling to see that sort of the industry has moved in this direction as well, with ETH 2.0 and other protocols moving into this idea of separating consensus and execution. So the idea essentially is that there's an underlying consensus layer which handles essentially only governance, staking, transfers of Rose token on the consensus layer, as well as the validation of proofs that come from the execution layer. And the execution layer is made up of parallel runtimes, known as paratimes. In a lot of ways, you can think of them as similar to rollups, but basically they handle all the smart contract computation and execution of computational logic, and then they submit proofs to the consensus layer for validation. So that's sort of how Oasis achieves scalability. This leads to Oasis to be sort of unique in the sense that we don't have just one network, but we have multiple networks or paratimes, which developers can choose from, and they can choose essentially which paratime best fits their needs and is most suitable for their application, as well as users can choose, which networks best fit their needs and is suitable for what they want to do. So right now we have 3 paratimes. We have Emerald, which is our EVM compatible paradigm. I'll go into that more in a second. We also have Sapphire and Cypher, but I think the next slide has some information on Emerald.
So
yeah,
I was just part of the Athmos hackathon recently, right? And I was learning more about the Cosmos ecosystem. And what you described there sounds a lot like the Cosmos kind of like architecture, where it's like a app chain kind of framework, and then you have this protocol that sits on top that kind of allows you to transfer the tokens around different kinds of app chains?
Yeah, so we're definitely humbled and sort of inspired in some ways by Cosmos. We use a modified version of Tendermint BFT for our consensus. So we were very close in the sense that we had a very similar consensus mechanism. I'd say the main differentiator between Cosmos is the consensus layer is there's a shared consensus layer, right? So the runtimes all submit proofs to the consensus layer. So it's almost more similar to an ETH 2.0 with rollups sitting on top and then submitting proofs to the beacon chain. But yeah, it also is similar to other modular blockchains, such as Cosmos. I think there's a lot of similarities, but also like some differences. I don't think Cosmos has like shared consensus. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, but I can elaborate.
Cool stuff.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, as I was saying before, we have 3 paradigms. The one that we're talking about today and that we recently integrated with Covalent is the Oasis Emerald paradigm. It's our 100% EVM compatible paradigm. So essentially anything that you can run on any other EVM will run on Emerald. The benefits of it is that it has full EVM compatibility. And then it's pretty highly scalable, so it can handle hundreds of transactions per second with low costs, so roughly 99% lower fees than Ethereum. And it does that all while having instant finality and also remaining like relatively decentralized in the sense that all the proofs are being sent down to the consensus layer, which has a robust validator pool. So Oasis Emerald is great for integration of like any EVM-based apps, DeFi, NFTs, gaming, metaverse, all that. And also has 3 cross-chain bridges, so for easy access to bridge tokens over. I think we have C-Bridge, Wormhole, and multi-chain right now. So that's a bit about Oasis Emerald. And then the other network that we want to talk about today is Oasis Sapphire, which is hopefully launching in the near future on mainnet. It's been on testnet for a few months now. We're really excited about Sapphire because it's the first and only confidential EVM network. So what that means is that it supports confidential smart contracts where developers can build applications which hide aspects of state. So the way that I always sort of explain this is with a DEX as an example. So you can imagine a DEX where you can hide all aspects of state, essentially, the wallets, you could hide the token balances, the amount transferred, everything about it, and create like a completely confidential DEX. But like maybe that's not very attractive right now due to regulatory concerns. But so instead of building a completely confidential DEX, what you could do is like you could just hide the slippage parameters as well as maybe the order book. And in this way, you could create like an MUD resistant DEX. So that, because essentially if you hide the slippage parameter, then like bots that are trying to front run you and do these sandwich attacks wouldn't be able to accurately calculate like whether they'd be profitable or not. And so they wouldn't, reliably be able to front run you. And so that's like sort of just like a brief example of like what you can do with confidential state. It's not so much about anonymity, but it's about like improved user experiences and the ability to create more sophisticated applications. So some of the features of Sapphire Network is confidential state supporting end-to-end encryption, confidential randomness. So what that essentially means is like you can randomly generate, you can generate like random numbers like VRF similar, but you can keep that value sort of hidden. So if you imagine like something like a deck of cards, you could randomly generate the whole deck of cards and then keep that hidden throughout the entire gameplay instead of like having to randomly generate each card. So Sapphire also is EVM compatible with easy integration of it supports Solidity and has, it's well suited for dApps for DeFi, NFT, metaverse, crypto gaming. And just like Emerald, it's highly scalable, low cost, and will support bridging on to other networks as well.
Is Sapphire live right now?
So Sapphire is not live at the moment, but we are planning to announce mainnet very, very soon. So please stay tuned for that. We are on testnet, And if anyone is interested in building on Sapphire, come into our Discord or Telegram or anything like that and reach out to us. We're happy to work with projects that are interested in, adding confidentiality to their applications.
I think this is so cool. Like, it's probably a really deep topic, like confidentiality, but what does it mean to like be able to, I guess, like conceal states? Like, if you conceal a state, right? Like, does it mean only you or whoever you assign the permissions to can access that state?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So yeah, Sapphire is very flexible. So what we like to say is that, like, you can build entirely public dApps on Sapphire, like things that work the same as they would on any other EVM, entirely confidential applications, or anywhere on the spectrum in between. So for example, the confidential DEX was like fully confidential. The MEV resistant DEX was like on the spectrum in between. But yeah, to your point, yeah, essentially you can create, it's how you develop, how you build the smart contracts. So you could build a smart contract in a way that only you can see the data associated with it, and then perhaps also allow people that you grant permission to see that data.
Right. So I would imagine there's like maybe a flag around that state variable, which like say hidden or something, hidden from public, and then other people can't see it or something.
Yeah, basically, it would be just not viewable to the validators on the Explorer, anything, if that's how it was designed, the smart contracts were designed. So we have a lot of developer docs to help people along this process, and I encourage anyone to check those out. Really, like, the thing we say with Sapphire is like, there's no reason not to use it, because it just is extremely flexible in the sense that you can build applications, I guess, to suit your best needs.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to go over about Oasis before we move on to the Covalent aspect is just some network highlights. So we launched our Emerald network in 2022. Our ecosystem is growing pretty rapidly. We have a bunch of sectors that have multiple applications, such as gaming, DeFi, as well as an Oasis native NFT marketplace called MetaMirror, who has support for like soulbound tokens, and also is doing some really cool stuff in like the DID space. So if anyone is interested in that, also, and the other thing that they're doing is really cool is like confidential NFTs. So on Oasis, on Emerald, you can create confidential NFTs. So NFTs that essentially have some metadata associated with it that obviously everyone can see, but then also have data that only the owner of that NFT can access. And so we think that that's a big step forward in the utility of the NFT space, which I think is very much needed. And so that's something that if anyone is interested in, I would encourage them to check out. Other network highlights is that we have our ecosystem fund has reached $235 million. So the ecosystem fund is essentially like an investment arm for Oasis, in the sense that we help support, invest in ecosystem applications to help them scale and become as large as they can be. So that's really exciting, and hopefully we can get more applications as soon as possible. We also announced a partnership with Meta, formerly Facebook, where we're assessing fairness in their AI models, but using privacy-preserving computation to do so that people can essentially share like their demographic data, but that data is not actually viewable by anyone but the person who shared it, all while still being able to assess whether the AI model is being biased towards that demographic data. We also had a partnership with Equifax recently announced. The idea here is to access Equifax's very large store of data, and be able to essentially use that for KYC, AML, and potentially further applications later on, and all again in a privacy-preserving way, so that the user remains in control of the data in the entire time. And then finally, I just want to encourage people to have to look at our grant program as well. So our grant program is for like the initial stage proof of concept building of an application. Of an application. So normally how this works is people apply to our grant program first, build out a proof of concept, get some initial utility, and then after like success through our grant program, and then they apply to the ecosystem fund to get like that larger seed round funding. It's something like that. So the grant program is ongoing, and we're happy to give grants to both applications on Emerald and Sapphire, in pretty much any of the large Web3 sectors. Yeah. So with that, yeah, Libing, if you want to go to Covalent.
Stuff. So many exciting opportunities for builders coming up. When's the next hackathon going to be? Would you know, for Oasis?
I don't think we have any confirmed dates, but we are yeah, we are actively like looking into having another hackathon, hopefully around the time of the Sapphire launch or soon after. There's I guess like East Denver, and there's consensus coming up, so we just have to figure out what works with our schedule.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, moving on to the Covalent aspect of it. So I'm sure there's lots of dev tools available for you on an EVM compatible chain like Oasis, Emerald, and Sapphire. But Covalent is basically a solution for you to get on-chain data really quickly into your application, right? Not so much on the backend aspect of Solidity code, like those you can use Chainlink and whatsoever, but more on the front end. So for instance, balances data, wallet data, transactions data, anything that you need to build Etherscan for instance, you can build it with Covalent. So moving on to, so the solution really came about because there are some data challenges when you're working with blockchain data. I'm sure many of you here would know the frustrations of interacting with JSON RPC nodes and realizing that to build a simple use case, you need to maybe call an endpoint 50 to 100 times. It's just really not efficient, right? And also, the blockchain was good for immutability. It's not known for exposing us a query language. We don't have that relational database kind of like experience, right? It's very hard to get high-level insights of basic things from the currently available methods of data querying on a blockchain. And if you would host your own archival node, like good luck. It's just very resource intensive. It's like terabytes of disk space, and also like has huge RAM kind of like resource consumption. So it's very expensive to do. And moving to the next one. So Covalent is really like a traditional REST API service that you can call from anywhere, a browser, your terminal, from within your code, etc. And technically, there's no code required. The response is the classic JSON response, and it enables you to build multi-chain apps within a matter of minutes, right? Because we have the same kind of request and response structure across the 40 plus chains that we support. How it works is that maybe some visuals on the next slide here. Obviously, the blockchains produce and host the data, which is exposed via RPC nodes. Covalent is really like the data layer that aggregates, transforms, and packages the most common use cases up into neat endpoints so that they can power the end users. And yeah, we are used by over 40,000 developers and more than 3,000 projects right now, including the likes of Rainbow Wallet, etc. So how do you get started? I think at this point, it's probably a good idea for me to share my screen to give you a quick demo of how you can get started from our API reference itself. I'm going to just share my screen here. So let me show you how you can get on-chain data from the Oasis Emerald paradigm. Obviously, when you launch the Covalent platform, when you go to this URL, covalenthq.com/docs/API, right? Everything else here is not really relevant. I'm just going to go here. You can select from this drop down here, the Oasis network, and I'm going to select the Oasis Emerald paradigm mainnet. I'm already logged in, so I'm not going to log in here again. But once you log in and register, you'll be able to get a free API key, and Covalent's endpoints will always be free. The free version will have a rate limit of 5 requests per second, which is everything that you need if you all the way till you finish building out your project, your MVP, and you want to scale. If you want to scale, then there's other paid plans that we are going to roll out soon. But right now, let me just take you through how you can call some on-chain data from Oasis Emerald paradigm. So let's say this is one of our top endpoints, getting balances. If you know getting ERC20 or wallet balances is a huge pain in the ass if you're using JSON RPC, because you need to supply each of the token contract address along with their APIs, right, to make each call. So let's say if you hold 10 tokens, which is not a lot for an average user in your wallet, you will need to get 10 APIs and 10 token addresses. Not really scalable. Whereas this is more from the perspective of a user, right? Once you selected the Oasis paradigm, the chain ID here will be changed to 42262, which is the chain ID of the Emerald paradigm. And I have actually prepared like this address, which is on the Emerald mainnet. This address holds, I'm just going to refresh it just in case there's any updates, holds a balance of 158.9 Rose token along with 2 tokens, ERC20 tokens here. And you go back here, you can call it from the comfort of this API reference here. You go to custom request, you drop the address here, and you click run. Let's give it a moment. Sometimes it's not very quick from the browser. And yeah, if we make this a bit bigger, we see that this is the response, right? You see that this address here just now, OX7856, holds rep rose token. Oh, the rep rose is actually dust. Right, let me see. Why does it? Yeah, so this is the native token actually, Emerald Rose. And the balance here is this amount, right? Start date. Wow. The balance changed really quickly when I refreshed it. So this is the amount of Rose token that this address holds, which you can see the balance here. This is denominated in weight. So 9429. To get this to the standard unit, of course, you take this divided by 10 to the power of the contract decimal 18 here, which will get the same as the balance that you see here. And there's actually a lot more tokens that this address holds. It says here there's 7 tokens. actually 8, including 0. So it actually holds some rep rows, but because the balance is 0, it still shows up here. So this user actually held some rep rows before. So Covalent's balances endpoint actually pulls a lot of the more historic holdings as well, as long as this address has held any token. And even if the current balance of that token is 0, it will also show here. So that's the power of the API as well. So you see this address held some USDC seller with a 0 balance as well. Uniswap LP token, the ones that actually has some balance, I believe, was the Yuzu token, which you can find the balance for 5005. And this is, yeah. So converting that to ETH, you'll get this amount. So everything that you need to display the balance as one address, you can use this endpoint. And what if you want to find all the transactions that this address has ever done? Like, let's say you want to do some analytics on it. You want to populate certain displays on your front end. You can use the get transactions for address. And similarly, you include that address here. Right? And then you click run. So here, I've actually loaded up this one in the browser to show you what the request structure looks like. So all these, this is your, this is the chain ID, and this is the address. This is the endpoint, transactions v2, and this is the response of all the transactions that this endpoint, this address has done. So here you see 100 items, right? So these correlate to everything that you see here. So this transaction has a hash of OX31F8 and OX31F8 here. You see this was made an hour ago. And what kind of transaction is it? You can find out from this endpoint itself. So from the log events, if you're familiar with log events here, it requires a bit of detailed knowledge on this side of things. You can see that it was a withdrawal event, right, of the rep rows token. And how much value was being withdrawn? This amount. So, you know, this was the nature of this transaction here. So this transaction item has one log event, so it's quite a simple transaction. And if you were to click here, you can see that it's a withdrawal of rep rows token here. So yeah, you can find out transactions information, you can find out balances information, you can also get some NFT data, which I wouldn't get into here. For instance, you can get all the external metadata, which is like the images of NFTs, etc. And also you can get DEX data. So any of the popular DEXs on Emerald, as long as they are following like the main smart contracts are similar to the Uniswap smart contracts, like you will be able to use all these endpoints to get detailed granular kind of like liquidity pools information, the fees, the volume, etc. So returning back to this, sorry. You can go to this Postman collection, covalenthq.postman.co, to quickly sample all of our endpoints. So that is, you know, really sweet. You can call all of our endpoints and examine them and study them. And what can you build from it? You can build NFT marketplaces. You can build portfolio managers like Zappa. each of these small components can be built by one of our endpoints. You can build wallets, of course. That's a very popular use case of the Covalent API. You can build these kind of like sites like CoinGecko. And yeah, that's just to give you guys a bit of inspiration. Covalent is sponsoring lots of hackathons. And I think many of you who come from the Covalent ecosystem would know that we've been part of the hackathon circuit last year, and we plan to continue being in the hackathon circuit this year. So come build with us, and you can also now get on-chain data from Oasis Emerald. I'm going to pass the time back to Will, who will go through, I'll just stop share here, who will go through some of the opportunities for builders on the Oasis Emerald ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you so much, Living, and thank you for the demonstration on Covalent. We're super excited to have that onboarded. Diana, are you going to share? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just maybe talking more about Covalent. One of the things that we're really excited about is I feel like it just allows for better user experiences with applications. Something like Dex is now, like, it enables analytics pages. Gaming allows again, analytics pages, and as well as like the ability to track more and more on-chain data. And then the other thing is just like applications that require the indexing. So like something like revoke.cache or like you said, portfolio managers, things of that nature. It just we're excited that it'll allow the users of the Emerald network to have a more robust ecosystem and more utility. So I guess going more into the ecosystems on Oasis. So for Emerald, I guess our sort of what Emerald is well suited for is DeFi, gaming, NFTs, and infrastructure applications. Like we said earlier, Emerald is 100% EVM compatible, but has like a lot of features that are has a lot of I guess beneficial features to the network. So it has the high throughput, hundreds of transactions per second. It has very cheap gas costs, so 99% lower than Ethereum, while also having 6-second blocks and instant finality, and remaining decentralized the whole way through. So the way that we sort of think about that, like what applications are well suited, are any application that I guess makes sense on other EVM networks, but maybe can't work well or can't scale due to gas costs or throughput, or needing to be more decentralized or something like that. So for example, like there was a protocol that I was following that was like a stable yield application. So you could essentially lock in a stable yield 5% or something like that. But the problem was that the gas costs associated with that contract were pretty high. So if you imagine 5%, like if you put in $1,000, 5% would equal like $50 after a year, but the gas cost would be almost that much. So your net outcome would be like you gain nothing. And so we think that Emerald is very well suited for that sort of application that is a really compelling idea, but needs needs like the more scalable, the higher scalability in order to function. So I guess what I would say is well suited for Emerald is cross-chain applications, as well as applications in DeFi, gaming, and the NFT space, which needs higher scalability, higher throughput, that sort of thing. Next slide, Diana. So yeah, and then Sapphire is, like I said, our EVM, our confidential EVM, allowing for confidential smart contract state. So we have sort of two thought processes with this. We have Sapphire native applications and Oasis privacy layer applications. I can go into both of those in a minute. But so a native application means one that is fully deployed on Sapphire. So examples of beneficial applications that would be deployed on Sapphire. We went over like the MEV resistant DEX. but there's also benefits for gaming. So in terms of gaming, like one of the things I always think about is that like most traditional games involve some like aspect of confidentiality. You know, like a real-time strategy game has fog of war. Poker requires you to not know what's in the other player's hands. You know, even like MMORPGs have like quests, riddles, puzzles, things of that nature that need to remain confidential, which right now is like not really possible on other EVM chains because everything is transparent. So if you were to put like a puzzle on, I don't know, Ethereum, the solution to the puzzle would be viewable, and also everyone's when they submit their transaction solving the puzzle, that would also be viewable. So on Sapphire, you can actually create, you know, a puzzle where the solution is hidden in the smart contract state, and also you can have encrypted transactions where people submit those submit their answers. So that is hidden as well. And so like we really think that like just improves the you know, I guess it expands what sort of games can be built on chain, which I think in the Web3 space, like it should be our goal, right? To put more and more things on chain to have to require less and less trust of centralized systems. And then the last sector is like NFTs. So we don't over confidential NFTs. Those are essentially NFTs where like there's some data which only the user or owner of that NFT can access, and then they can grant permissions to and revoke permissions for other people to access that data as well. This is like good for I think things like loyalty rewards as well as like paywalled content. So loyalty rewards saying that like you did something or yeah, completed some maybe it's on chain, maybe it's off chain, but you completed some task that maybe you want to keep confidential, but is represented in an NFT. Like maybe you have like, I don't know, 5 punches of something, and you don't want people to know that you have done this thing. And the paywall content I think is pretty clear. You can essentially create like, you know, I don't know, something similar to Patreon, where like you have like a, you know, documents, or you have videos that are only accessible to people who subscribe to you, and so you can create that as an NFT with like some sort of IPFS file that only the viewer can see, and then he can essentially provide access to people who have subscribed to him or something like that. Oh, and then DID verified credentials. This is sort of like what I was talking about with the Equifax partnership. So essentially, like you can create a soulbound token with people's private information connected to that soulbound token, which only they can see, and then they can grant that access to other smart contracts or to other people on the network in order to, I guess, be granted or access to certain privileges. So mostly that's like for KYC, AML type things. So you can imagine that if some lending protocol wanted to make sure that you were a resident of some country, that you were above the age of 18, and things of that nature, you could essentially have that data all stored in a confidential NFT as a soulbound token, and then you could share that information as needed with that application, where if like you meet the requirements, you can be granted access, or if you don't meet the requirements, you could, you know, it would know that as well. So these are some like really cool use cases for native applications on Sapphire, but we're also really excited to talk about the Oasis privacy layer, which is the next slide. So when we came out with Sapphire, we were pretty excited, like right out the gate, about like what we could do on the Sapphire network. But one of the things we quickly realized is like we weren't limited to just confidentiality on Sapphire. We could really empower applications on any network to add confidentiality into their protocols. So the idea essentially is to leverage message passing bridges, such as like AnyCalls, multi-chains AnyCall bridge, or something like Layer 0, in order to send messages from Sapphire to other chains. And also to leverage like gas relayers to make a frictionless user experience. So I guess like the best way again is with an example. The example I like to give is like Aave. So if you imagine like Aave is on Ethereum, they most likely don't want to move off of Ethereum to Sapphire because all their TVL is on Ethereum, all their users are on Ethereum. It has the largest network effects, all of that. So they're definitely not going to move their entire application, but maybe they'll move just like a portion of their application. So for example, like a secret ballot or confidential DAO voting. So maybe Aave wants to add the ability to vote anonymously on DAO proposals in order to remove bias. So for example, like I think Stani of Aave is famously like abstains from voting on any of the DAO proposals in order to not bias the outcome. But I guess that's not necessarily an ideal situation, because the founder of a protocol is not able to actually partake in the governance of that protocol. So one of the ways to solve that is with confidential DAO voting. And so how that would work is essentially you move your governance contract to Sapphire, and when a proposal takes place, a message will be sent to Sapphire in order to start the voting process. Users then can sign their transactions on Sapphire for placing their vote. The votes will be confidentially aggregated, and then when the result comes, it'll be sent back over through a message passing bridge to Ethereum, where I guess the change can take place if the vote passes. And then the idea is also that you can use gas relayers, so that essentially payment can be made in like Ether if it's on Ethereum, and therefore it's a very frictionless user experience. Users essentially don't even know that they are leaving the network. So that's an overview of like what we think about the Oasis privacy layer, and then I'd like to go over some more applications for that. So yeah, I think we just went over like DAO tooling and secret ballot. Another one that is interesting is confidentiality enabled NFT auctions. So this is something like a candle auction or a sealed bid auction. So a candle auction is one where essentially like you can set, let's say, an auction to take place over like 1 to 3 days, but you randomly select a block to be the end time, and you hide that so that no one can see. And sort of the game theory involved there is that because no one can see when it ends, there's like you avoid this eBay last second, trying to undercut people style of auctions, and it allows for like better price discovery because people have to essentially put their best price forward because they don't know when it's going to end, and that sort of thing. Again, like this is only possible on Sapphire because on other networks you wouldn't be able to hide, the block that the auction is ending. So that's like one interesting aspect. And then sealed bid auctions are, as they sound, essentially, enabling bids on the network to be hidden so that other people can't see what people are bidding. And this enables like a more sophisticated auction mechanisms like sealed bid second price auctions, as well as like Victory Grove auctions, which are heavily used in traditional markets, but are not really possible in Web3 today. And so what we're excited is that we can, enable these things using Sapphire and this message passing bridge. Gaming is another one. So we went over how gaming can be used for like native applications for the privacy layer. It works just the same way. So maybe you don't want to, maybe your game already exists on Polygon, maybe your game already exists on Binance Smart Chain, and you all your users there, and you don't want to move, to an entirely new chain. But maybe you want to include confidentiality in like a mini game or something. So what you could do is you could build that mini game on Sapphire. Let's say it's a puzzle, or a riddle. So you build a riddle smart contract on Sapphire. When users get to that in game, they'll switch networks. They'll submit their solution to the riddle on Sapphire. If their solution is correct, then you can send a message back over through the message passing bridge to whatever their origin chain is, Binance Smart Chain, Polygon, whatever. And like an NFT reward could be released, or XP could be released, or something can, they can get the prize for correctly solving that puzzle. And so in this way, like, again, I guess the real benefit is that you don't have to launch your entire application on the Sapphire network. You can sort of just leverage it to put only the confidential things that you want on the network, and then use message passing bridges to make it seamlessly integrate with your larger protocol. And then the DID verified credentials we went over before about how you can use soulbound tokens. Again, this is not limited to just Sapphire native applications, but you can imagine that same example where maybe you want to prove that you're above the age of 18 and you live in a certain country in order to take place in like an airdrop or something like that. That airdrop doesn't have to necessarily take place on Sapphire. It can take place on another network, and we can preserve confidentiality by sending over like a Boolean expression over the message passing bridge. So like a binary 0 or 1, this person does qualify, this person doesn't qualify. And sort of the verification and computation for that is done on the Sapphire network. So these are some initial ideas. I hope that any developers in the audience are inspired by these. I think it is like a huge step forward for Web3 as a whole. And hopefully we can build some really, really cool applications and push the space forward.
Well, that's a lot of very interesting privacy enabled ideas there.
Yeah. We're pretty excited. I think it's sort of, the applications for this are limitless, and it really, I don't know, it's kind of a very often used analogy, but like Web 2, when it went from HTTP to HTTPS, that sort of was the explosion of Web 2, and now allowing people to have like e-commerce and have like encrypted sessions while they're browsing the web. So essentially, we saw that privacy was integral to the massive expansion of Web 2, and we think that this is sort of the same moment for Web 3. Now applications can be far more sophisticated, and again, like I'd like to express that we use the term confidentiality, and I think in crypto, a lot of the times that gets like misconstrued as like anonymity or like making confidential transactions. But if you think about like all the use cases I just gave, none of those use cases were about anonymity. They were all about just like more sophisticated applications, better user experiences, and the ability to make more compelling applications. So that's really what I would like to highlight as the power of Sapphire. I hope that like the space can move away from the idea of that confidentiality is just about anonymous transactions, and more so it enables like much more interesting use cases for the space.
Definitely. I see a couple of participants raising their hands. They've been raising their hands for quite a while now. So a crypto samurai, feel free to unmute yourself or to drop your questions in a chat. Do we have a chat? Yeah, we do have like a Q&A chat, whichever is most comfortable for you. Or I also see a hand by RV Chauhan, if you like to pop us your question. Maybe you guys configuring your microphones.
So I apologize to anyone who is wondering why I keep going on and off screen. There's just some things going around my house right now. I'm trying to, not make it public. So yeah, thank you for.
If not, maybe, yeah, anytime you guys feel like it, just drop a question. But we've got 2 open questions in the Q&A. The first one is by Eero Crypto Exponential, which I think this question is for you. Will, what are the use cases for AI in Oasis? It's a big question.
What are the use cases for AI in Oasis? So I think AI is heavily relies on data. Like it's only as powerful as the data that it has access to. But with that growing need for data, we see a growing need for privacy as well. AI will benefit from more sensitive data, but also that means that people probably don't want to share that data. So what Oasis, I guess, enables is a suite of privacy-preserving computation that allows people to retain ownership of their data and the ability to share like permission and then revoke access to the data and set like I guess parameters around how that data is used. So I think that right now we don't really have any on-chain applications for AI, but in the future that's mostly how I see Oasis benefiting the AI space, is just allowing like more sensitive data to be shared with these AI models in a privacy preserving way. So for example, like we do have partnerships with genetics companies like Nebula Genomics and Genetica. And so like that's highly sensitive data, and one that you essentially can't get back right now if you share it with other genetic sequencing companies. But like you don't know the power of that in 100 years. And so, yeah, you probably want to retain ownership of that data. And this is the type of thing that will be made possible with Oasis.
Awesome. So there's another question. Is there a clear differentiation between confidential SBT and confidential NFT?
Yeah, I guess the differentiation would be that like confidential NFT is more broad. I would say that confidential SBT is a form of confidential NFT. Soulbound tokens are ones that are uniquely made so that they can't be transferred. So once you have your soulbound token, it's locked to that wallet and that identity. And confidential NFTs can be sort of more generalized, so they can be sent from one wallet to another, and they also are maybe not so focused on verified credentials and decentralized identity, but they can have applications for gaming and other areas as well. You can imagine an NFT of an in-game item which has like some stat block or maybe like a unique story or even like a clue to something in game. And yeah, these are like not necessarily the benefits of soulbound tokens, but something that definitely is possible with confidential NFTs, and I'm looking forward to being built.
Good stuff. We've got a third question by Vishal, who asks, what makes Oasis so unique compared to other layer ones? And I think I can kind of answer it on your behalf already, Will. And you can, chip in, but from my understanding, it's really that privacy focus that you guys have that is not something that you hear a lot about. And a lot of times, like, it does open up doors to different kinds of use cases. For instance, if you want to host like healthcare data, right? Like on a public blockchain, or if you want to host your supply chain data, if you're in the supply chain industry and you want to keep certain aspect of your supply chain management, like private for security reasons or for like business competition reasons, like those can be kept secret. But apart from that, what else would you say is the most shining selling point of Oasis?
Yeah, so I think you touched on it, the major one, which is our privacy focus.
Yeah.
I think we're doing things in the space that no one else is doing, and we're really propelling Web3 forward in that regard. The other, I guess, like main distinguisher, I would say, is the fact that we built this modular approach like from the very beginning. So the separation of consensus and execution, and because it was like designed purposely for that purpose, for that ability, it achieves like I guess far more scalability. So for example, like our consensus layer can handle like 1,000 transactions per second, which means that it can support hundreds, if not like 1,000 paratimes on top of it. And as great as like Ethereum is, I think like the Ethereum consensus layer will never really, or as of right now, won't really go over like 25, 30 transactions per second, which limits, I guess, like the amount of rollups that could exist on top of it, as well as potential for like cross-chain communication. So that's like one benefit, is that we sort of had this approach in the beginning, which allows us to be more flexible and more scalable. And on the flexibility side, it's, I guess, what I mean there is like, we can spin up networks to meet developers' needs, and like essentially we can follow the industry, and when we see that there's a need for something on the Oasis network, we can add it pretty quickly. So, for example, we didn't talk today about Sapphire, but Sapphire is our third paradigm. It's essentially similar to Sapphire. It's a confidential computation environment, but it supports WebAssembly instead of Solidity. So as maybe WebAssembly becomes more popular, that network would be available to people as well. And we're now like even we release a blog post, and we're collecting community feedback on potentially launching a move paradigm as well, as that's becoming popular too. So yeah, that's another benefit of Oasis, is that we're very flexible and able to like build networks that can meet any developer or user's needs.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We have one more question by Kisu. Do you have any projects in the pipeline for Sapphire?
Yeah, so we launched a testnet hackathon in September. There was a few really cool projects that were involved in that, and we're working on getting them launched on mainnet when we go live soon. So the products there were ARX. ARX is a decentralized fiat on/off ramp. So essentially, they use like game theory and Nash equilibriums to connect users together so that they can, on ramp or off ramp cash onto Web3, similar to like what Binance or Paxos does, but in a decentralized way. So trustless. Then there was also a product called Momentum, who is working on, creating something similar to like Telegram or like encrypted messages, and they leverage Sapphire for the confidentiality there. And then the third protocol was one called on-chain ID, and the best way I could describe it is it's similar to like Collabland, where you can connect like social media profiles to your wallets in a confidential way. But the benefit is that it's all managed through smart contracts, so it's entirely decentralized, versus the solutions that exist today require you to trust them with your social media data. There's no real way to keep that data autonomously owned by you. And so those are a few hackathon projects that are building. We also have a few products in our grant pipeline, MU-resistant indexes, NFT auctions, things of that nature. But I would encourage anyone who's looking to build on Oasis to reach out to us, and we can get you an application to the grant program as well as the ecosystem fund. We're always looking for more use cases and developers to build on the network.
Awesome. Interested devs, please hit up Will's DMs. All right, I think we are 1 hour in, and I don't think we'll have any more time for any questions now, but thank you guys for staying with us throughout this entire webinar. Hope it has been an engaging and productive session for you guys. And if you have any further questions, you can reach out to either me or you can reach out to Will. I'm sure we'll be able to very happy to chat with you about your ideas or projects whatsoever.
Yeah,
Will, do you have any final words?
And thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this this webinar and learning about Oasis as well as Covalent. If you have any questions, please join the Oasis Discord as well as Telegram and reach out there. I'm happy to answer any questions, and